Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, whatever you are. Good evening. Thank you for joining us for this episode of 30 Minutes Robotic Milking Edition. I'm your host, Mar Sanders, dairy science professor and extension specialist at the University of Minnesota in St. Paul. With us today, we also have your co-host, Jim Sulphur, dairy extension educator at the St. Cloud Regional Office. Hi, Jim.
Hi, and hi, everybody.
So today, as usual, I want to remind you that if you're watching this particular episode as a recording on YouTube and you want to join us for the live virtual discussion next time, please register at z.umn.edu/30MINRM, and then you will get your own unique Zoom link to join the discussion. Once you register, you do not have to register again. You'll be in the list of attendees, and you'll get reminders every month about the webinar. If you don't want to join, just delete those. Also, if you cannot join in person, you get a reminder where the YouTube channel is housed, I guess, or how you get to the YouTube channel where the recorded episodes are posted. Would really ask for your cooperation here and using the Q&A box rather than the chat box when you are asking questions during this episode. And Jim and I will be only looking at the at the Q&A, not the chat box. We'll be asking your questions or reading your comments on your behalf. Just want to remind you, this is the week before our event, Precision Dairy Conference next week. We're all excited. It's going to be a great event about things related to technology, not just robotic milking, but all types of technology that are used on farm today to better manage our herds and our cows and our employees. So please join us. It's my pleasure now to invite our guest for today, Nathan from Wisconsin. And for the first time ever, Nathan actually will be live at the conference next week, talking about their dairy operation at the event. Also, we have quite a few producer panels and producers sharing their experience with technology. So Nathan, very pleased to have you here today. And also again with us next week on Tuesday, so at 11 a.m. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to join everybody next week as well. Yeah, I'll start by kind of explaining how we got into robots, what led us into that side of our operation. We were looking at robots before November 1st, 2017. That's when this fire happened out at our operation. It was a parlor fire, took off pretty quick. It was didn't last very long. It was hot. But we had looked at robots for about a year and a half before that fire had actually happened. And so we had an idea of how robots worked, what we were looking at when it came to that. And we had to pivot our future plans of what the farm was going to look like overnight. And within 2 days, of the fire happening, we had an idea of, all right, the milk house is going here, and we're going to kind of position the robots in the barn this way. We got a slide of the layout of the barn that we ended up choosing. We got 16 Lely A4 robots. We've been running for 5 years now. You know, we've learned along the way, made things better, but we have 2 robots per pen in an L-shaped configuration. There's separation pens with feed and water with about a handful of stalls in there. It's worked out pretty well. It actually fit our barn like a glove. It's a retrofit, so there are some things that we wish we could have done differently, but being a retrofit, there's a few things that we're working on to improve some labor efficiencies even more, but it's worked pretty well. It's made our operation a lot more profitable than I think if we were milking in a parlor today, to be honest. So that's what the farm looks like today. The long barn there, that's where all the robots are housed. We added on to the robot, or added onto the barn right there to kind of make the pens more even. And on the opposite end of the barn, actually, there's less stalls in those two pens. So we actually utilize one of those pens as a fresh cow pen with two robots, and can kind of keep that pen less stocked so the cows have more access to robots. Just to the north, that's the dry cow barn that we built the same time we installed the robots. So fire happened November 1st. We started milking the first 4 robots, started milking the end of March of 2018. And then we had 12 running by the summer. And then the final 4 were up and running in October of 2018. So that dry cow barn, that was a big improvement on our operation, cow comfort, and being able to feed cows far off as well as pre-fresh diets. We do have a manure system that we separate sand and use sand as bedding. That's right there. And a lagoon that has about 11 million gallons worth of storage there. So one thing that's different on this picture that we changed this year is our heifers. We aren't raising heifers anymore on farm. They're actually leaving at a week old, going to a custom raiser. And we're utilizing our calf labor, focused more on milk quality and driving that down. So rearranged a little bit of things there and yeah, focused a little differently there. So front of the view, actually where the flagpole is sitting is actually where the parlor had sat. And that was in a barn that was built in the late 1800s. I think it was built in 1880 something. The farm was homesteaded in 1877. So there's a lot of history. But it was sad to see that barn go, very devastating, but we always, things happen for a reason. It was God's plan, and we're always positive in anything that comes our way, and always look for the positive side of things. So we've ran with it and learned along the way with robots, and it's worked out very well. So this is a picture of me standing in the barn. I took a photo each way, so it kind of splits the barn. And you can kind of see there's clusters of 4 robots. And so we actually have all the chemicals in the first room on the outside. There's little drover's lanes that we actually move cows to and from pens on the outside of this barn. That's undercover. It's all inside. So it makes it really easy for moving cows to and from pens when we're moving fresh cows or drying off cows. And even foot trim day, we'll use our separation pens, and all we have to do is open a few gates, run them down the drover's lane, and get them over to the foot trimmer. So we actually crisscross our chemicals over to the robot rooms, and so there's some overhead stuff I'll show later on. One thing we learned, so we built, we started milking 2018. And I think it was 2019, we had that polar vortex come through. And that was our first full winter with robots. And we learned pretty quickly we needed to button up the barn a little bit. So we threw some baffles on our ridge that we can choke down the barn, hold some heat in the barn. And so that polar vortex time, it got down to like negative 40 degrees. We were moving heaters around. We've learned along the way now we've gotten down to even negative 35, and yeah, one guy can keep the barn running all night. There's no extra hassle. Barn stays warm. Just circulate air more with fans. We unplug some and just keep the air moving. But yeah, that was one thing we learned in a quick hurry, how to manage up in Wisconsin with frigid weather in the winter. So, and then here's from the front of the barn looking all the way through. It's a long barn. It works great. We didn't have, being a retrofit, we're able to utilize this barn in a very efficient way without having to spend a lot of money on a brand new building, which those costs just keep going up and up. So we do have sprinkler systems. We got little tube PVC pipe that is sprinkling the cows when it's hot. And then we have chain disc You can kind of see some pipes in the middle of the barn there overhead. There's some chain disc conveyors that move corn gluten to the robots. That's what our feed type is in the robots, is corn gluten. I can get into that later on in discussion. Yeah, see what we got next. Just kind of robots in general. They walk up. We got a little bit of the way the barn was designed. We have a flush flume that the alley scrapers scrape to, and then it triggers a flush as it's dumping in. That flushes down to our manure system and separates everything out. On a couple robots, this one in general is a little higher step off the robot, but these cows are older cows. They have no problem with it. Our visits, right now we're averaging 2.8 milkings a day with like 1.6 refusals. So cows are coming to the robots. Don't end up with too many fetching cows in these pens even. And that all has to come back to nutrition too. There's a few things we kind of watch there that if they're not visiting the robots, we kind of have to tweak the diet a little bit. But yeah, there's always cows hanging around the robots, waiting to come in. This is a picture looking into the separation pens with the sand. You got 4 or 5 stalls. We'll route cows for breeding shots right away in the morning. Our employees will route cows that need to get bred into those pens, so we're not disturbing any of the cows. And so you can load up and just go breed cows when you need to, and it's efficient. We route our fresh. We actually use those separation pens for our fresh heifers. And for the first 2 weeks, we will put 2 or 3 heifers into each of those pens and scatter them around the barn, because it's pretty important for us to fetch those 4 times a day and make sure they're visiting the robot going through 4 times a day those first 2 weeks. And so to make it efficient for our guys, we scatter around. We have 2 guys fetching those every 6 hours and just pushing them through. It doesn't take too long when there's only a couple in each pen. And after the first couple days, the cows are calm. They kind of have an idea of what's going on, and it goes pretty smoothly. The right picture here, that's the foot bath. We made the arches and the fiberglass gates that just collapse away. And then we flip down the foot bath. And we're trying something a little different this year with zinc sulfate. And main thing, our foot health actually went from one of the worst feet our foot trimmer had, because the cows had such a long walk up to the parlor and had a lot of time on their feet in the holding area and all that stuff, that going to robots really benefited the longevity of our cows because of foot health. One of the biggest issues we have is warts, but we've figured out how to manage that and still tweaking it in a cost-effective way. But the foot baths, it's not perfect in this pen. It's actually right next to the robot, but we literally we'll just make a loop with the cows 2 times through the foot baths and then open her back up, and cows still have access to the robots and all that, and then we get out of their hair and let them be cows. But the rest of the pens actually have the foot bath on the opposite end of the pens. This pen in general is next to the robot, but it doesn't deter visits, and we don't see much of a hiccup. We do foot baths 4 days a week, and then the other 3 days we're kind of staying out of their hair and letting the cows be cows. So yeah, and I can go into other topics. We can go into our production right now. We've really grown. When we started with time of the fire, I think we were producing, it was 78 pounds of milk with like a 4.5 fat and 3.5 protein, which was crazy. And now today we're 92.5 pounds of milk, 3.25 with 3.35 protein. And we're trying to build off that and keep pushing pounds of solids per cow per day, with a goal of 8 pounds, maybe 8 pounds of solids a cow maybe eventually. But our biggest goal is feed efficiency, and that's really improved even with feeding corn gluten in the robots. We're focused on feed efficiency because feed's our biggest cost and expense. So driving that higher will benefit the farm even more, and yeah, focused on that genetics wise as well as how we're feeding cows. So
Great overview. Thank you, Nathan. I think you meant 425 for fat, right? I think instead of 3.
425.
Okay. So excellent. Holsteins, I think I've noticed a lot of more productivity on Holsteins, but good to see that in robots too. Sometimes we hear that robots have less, components, but you're pretty high there. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we have one question already. So I try to prioritize the questions here from the audience. So question about, we talked briefly about how you manage ventilation in the winter. What about the summer ventilation? Do you also, you mentioned the sprinklers, but do you also have fans, things like that?
Yeah, so I forgot to touch on the fans. So yeah, the fans, those were in the barn before the fire. And so we added a few more fans for the separation pens to kind of move air around through those areas. Because those got stale. That's kind of what we found out the first winter or first summer. And so we added some fans around there, and curtains are all wide open. And the dry cow barn is nice, tall sidewalls. That's a really airy barn, comfortable. And looking, when it comes to heat abatement, I think that the next technology will be some of those misters with the sensors that while the cow's there to kind of decrease some of our water usage even more in the future. But yeah, the fans, that's how we manage the summer heat. So
the cows have been coming even the summertime. There's not a lot of bunching going on or anything. Natural ventilator. Okay.
Yeah, even with the only bunching I see, and that just comes from how you manage flies. That's really the only bunching I'll see is when the flies are bad. But that's just, you make sure your fly control is on point and you stay on top of it, and cows stay moving. So
okay, sounds good. Jim, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, Nathan, there's a question kind of about bedding. It looked like sand to me, and that was this question. Bed sand in your stalls. How often do you bed? How do you clean, rake the stalls? Maybe just as an add-on to the question, do you see any special repairs or do anything with your robots to manage the sand? So kind of more about your sand bedding.
Perfect. So I'll hit on how we do the sand, putting it into the stalls and raking and all that. So we'll throw sand. We have a big homemade sand shooter. We have a hell of a shop crew that can vent anything. So we can put it ends up being probably 12 loader buckets of sand in about a half hour. And we do about a third of the barn in a day. And so we're not disturbing everybody. We kind of do half the barn on the back stalls one day. Next day, do the other half on the back stalls, and then do all the fronts the third day. And then we're go in with a bedding groomer that actually stirs the stalls up and it levels the stalls when we put the sand in. And then the days we're not putting sand, so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the guys go through during the robot wash to just level out the beds and groom them. And when it comes to raking, like cleaning manure out of the stalls, we threw a brisket pipe. Our half our barn was built in 98, and then there was another portion that was built in 2006, and then again another section in 2012. So the stalls got better as we go. So there's some shallow beds on the ones that were built in 98. So there's only a few inches of sand in those. But the deep beds, we ended up putting a brisket pipe to index the cows better. So there's still a few spots where you have to, clean the manure out, but they stay nice and clean. We talked about moving calves away from the farm to a custom raiser. The gentleman who's feeding calves is focused after taking care of those young calves that are under a week old. He'll go, and that's all his focus is on, is spinning through and cleaning stalls. What I find is if you have guys focused on one task and doing a really good job on it, they'll do a really good job. If you're trying to throw 5 things at them, well, they'll do 5 things, but they might not be as good as we need. So stalls, we've been cleaning like that and focused on it. Our cell counts running 165 the last 4 months. Our sand's not as clean as what we'd like it to be. We mix in some lime to kind of dry things out and keep the pH where it needs to be. But we know how to manage it with certain post dips and certain products on that side of things. So last summer we tried, improving some cost of production, going away from the post dip that we knew worked and went with a cheaper one. Well, it kicked us kicked us around. We lost some ground on our cell count. Back in 21, I think we averaged 148 for the whole year.
Okay.
And we had, we milk 1,000 cows. So in robots, I know everybody said, yeah, you're going to have troubles with cell count, but that was our best for our operation ever for cement cell. So
it's just how you manage, right, Nathan? And then
Yep,
so the
it's a
little
lot.
difference that just the dip made, right? Just like sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
switching a little bit to you implemented robots, any other automation that you have in your farm? And then there's also a follow-up question talking about have you considered something like a vector feeding system?
Yeah. So we do have automation. So we have a Juno feed pusher pushing up feed in a dry cow barn. So we found with pens, the way the barn's designed, we just have too much feed at the bunk to push up effective enough for me with the Juno. So we still push the feed up on the milk cows with a skid steer since we have somebody in the barn all the time. And so we use that Juno in the dry cow barn because when it's cold, you have to drive the skid steer out to the dry cow barn, and it's nice you don't have to do it when the Juno's running and keeping things pushed up. So the other thing, we do some technology we use. We do have feed software for monitoring shrink and dry matter intakes and all that stuff. So I'm a numbers guy. If I know the numbers and we can track things on feed and improve. If you know the numbers, you can improve on stuff. If you don't, it's hard to know where you're at. So.
But for the feeding, you guys never consider maybe having something more automated, right?
We have.
You have, okay.
We've discussed that, but where we're at, and with it being a retrofit, there's just some things that we're
too hard.
Yeah, we we could make it work. We know we'd make it work, but we actually feed with 2 feed trucks, and we'd bring a guy out of the barn for he comes out of the barn for an hour and a half, helps the feeder, and we're done feeding in 3.5 hours. So
okay, so hasn't been an issue. Yep, that's not. Yep.
And if a truck goes down, you still have a second truck. So if the robot went down, that's kind of all hands on deck and figure it out ASAP. So
yeah, that's true. Jim, maybe you can move on to the somatic cell count question.
Do you have a somatic cell counter on your robots, or you just use conductivity, or are you considering them?
So we talked through that when that was an option. We did not put those in. We don't even test DHI. The robots, the thing with Lely's that I love is you got those daily fat and protein numbers, and you can manage cows better that way. And we go off of conductivity, and we know which cows are higher because of how their conductivity is. And but when it comes to clinical mastitis, we'll go a couple weeks without a case of mastitis. So in managing that, we'll route that cow into the separation pen, strip out the quarter, see what she needs, and make the decision on does she need a mastitis tube, or how are we handling that? And the treatments, there's very few treatments. Most of our time is spent on fresh cows, and even there, it's 5-6 cows that get looked at that really get focused on, and on 1,000 cows, that's pretty efficient. So, and being that our fresh pen's all in one pen, until 30 days of milk. We're able to utilize our herdsmen in that pen, really focused on them, and then we don't have to stir up the other pens looking for the cows that with rumination collars and activity. That really helps pinpointing the cows we need to look at and not wasting time just walking through pens, stirring cows up, trying to find somebody who's sick. So.
And I don't think we talked about, you mentioned that you do have a herds person that focuses primarily on the fresh cow pen, but how many employees you have?
Yeah, so we
robots?
On the cow side of things, on the barn crew, and this counts our feeder, who also takes care of our heifer farm that's 10 miles away. We have some beef animals we raise there, and some embryo heifers and stuff like that. There are 8 employees on the cow side of things, plus myself, so 9. Okay. Total farm employees, we're at 14, and pre-fire we were at 22. So, we really backed off labor. We pulled 6 guys out of the barn side of things, and really got things more efficient there with robots, it seems like, and there's things we can do to improve it even more so. There, with the retrofit, there's a lot of manual scraping, because the alley scrapers, we have alley scrapers in the alleyways, and so there's spots that have to be manually scraped, and from an employee standpoint, we're trying to improve that for them. And that's, the alley scrapers are one of our biggest headaches. So we're trying to be creative and find ways, of maybe a robot cleaning pens with sand. So I know there's some options out there. We're trying to find what the best option is for us, but our alley scrapers, within 2.5 years, well, 2.5 years, we've had to rebuild them. 5 years, we've rebuilt them probably 5 different times. Wow. But the chain should have been replaced probably in 3 years, but we pushed it out to 4. So, but stuff wears, like Jim had asked. We put chains on the Lely robots for the sand. Normally they just come with rope on the detach. Right. So there's a chain, and we'll watch those. And when failures and connection attempts start to inch up on robots, we'll really focus on the bottoms of the cups, and is the chain getting wore, and we have employees on staff that do all the maintenance. We don't call service people out. That's one thing that really sets us apart when it comes to maintenance. So
that's great. Yeah, doing it more in-house really saves a lot of money too. And
can I have a follow-up, Marcia?
Okay.
We're almost out of time. We've got one question, but related to labor, how do you staff? You had talked about having people in the barn 24 hours a day. Just how do you staff that labor, kind of hours? What do they, can you kind of give us a feel for what they do?
Yep. So we have 2 guys, 2 guys come in with the herdsman at 5 a.m. and that's when we fetch at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. And the 2 guys go out and start fetching pens, which normally most of the pens are anywhere from 2 to 5 cows. Some of them actually you might even only get 1 cow, but they'll fetch those, and it takes an hour and a half. 6:30, those 2 guys are finishing scraping ends of the pens and that kind of thing. By 7, they're pretty well wrapped up with that. Herdsman's looking at the fresh pen, fetching those at 6 a.m. We fetch that pen a little differently. We fetch the fresh pen 3 times a day. So 6 again at 3 p.m. and then 11 p.m. And so we got some guys coming in at around 10 a.m. and kind of we focus on sand and all that midday when the robots are washing at 12:30. We get all the sand done. We got more people on hand, and then the morning guys are kind of wrapping things up at 3 p.m. 3 p.m. There's some flexibility with robots that if somebody wants to leave early, take a day off early, we can, because we got employees to do so. And then the afternoon guys, there's a guy, our night guy herdsman comes in at 5 p.m., does fetching with another gentleman who came in at 10, and he leaves night at 9 p.m. after cleaning dry pen and doing things like that. And then it's just one guy, the night herdsman's by himself from 9 until 3 in the morning. That's after the robots wash at 2. And And then he's just on call until for the next 2 hours, nobody's in the barn, which is, there's not many times after he leaves, he gets called back. Every now and then there's something, but yeah, not too often. As the herd manager, I'll get a couple calls, but I've been really impressed with our employees being able to troubleshoot issues that come up overnight, and I might get called up to the farm a couple times over the course of a year. So,
oh, wow. That's nice. We'll take a final question off the recording. I guess I want to stick with the 30 minutes. Here is noon. I want to thank everyone for attending this live discussion today, and special thanks to you, Nathan, for taking the time, and invite everybody to come back for the July episode. And we'll take this question that's remaining offline here, but thank you again for attending.